Welcome to episode 21 of the Sports Geek podcast. On today's episode, we'll chat with Adrian Kinderis about calls to action in advertising, what works, and we look at how the Clippers explain dynamic and variable ticket pricing, and some tools you can use with Google Chrome.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who sees far too many inappropriate photos athletes post online, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. That's right, my name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek. Thank you very much for the feedback I've been getting recently. I'm trying to improve this podcast all the time. You can always send me an email. Old-fashioned, old-school style. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com will get me. I love your suggestions for improvements and changes to the show and feedback overall. So thank you very much. So let's jump into the show. I want to kick off today's show with an interview with Adrian Kinderis. Adrian wrote an article on Marketing Mag recently looking at the calls to action in advertising in the AFL and NRL Grand Final, as well as also looking back at what's happening in the Super Bowl around advertising and what's the best call to action. Is it social? Is it domains? We have a discussion about that. So here's my discussion with Adrian Kinderis from ARI Registry Services on domains in advertising. I want to welcome to the Sports Geek podcast Adrian Kinderis from ARI Registry Services. Welcome to the podcast, Adrian.
G'day, Sean. How you going?
Good, thanks. I wanted to touch base with you. You wrote an article recently on Marketing Mag analysing the performance of the adverts on the AFL and the NRL Grand Final and looking at the calls to actions. What were some of the findings that you found from this year's Grand Finals?
Yeah, look, it's something we've done for the last few years, and it's been pretty interesting to follow the different trends that have been coming through the way that folks are performing calls to action in those advertisements at that time. It's a derivative really of the Super Bowl. We know that there's a lot of hype around the Super Bowl ads, and so we equate our AFL and NRL Grand Finals to both of those, to the pinnacle of sporting in our country.
Yep.
Me being from Melbourne, clearly I think the AFL Grand Final is a pinnacle. So we applied the same sort of logic and looked at the ads, and I think probably the first part is I don't know that there's the same sort of hype in our ads locally. I don't know that, I know when I've been in the US for the Super Bowl and sitting at a Super Bowl party, you don't move from your television screen whilst those ads are on. There is a lot of hype around them, and they're actually most times more enjoyable than the actual Super Bowl itself.
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, we've seen ads do effectively get launched before the Super Bowl to create buzz. We had a lot of the Twitter chatter that was happening around the Super Bowl is around the ads, and a lot of people are watching it for the ads. But yeah, I agree. Other than I think maybe Vegemite renaming Vegemite at a grand final, I can't really remember an AFL ad or an NRL ad that really hit the mark.
Yeah, so that in itself, putting my marketing hat on, I think is a really interesting, considering the audiences that are going out there. 3.6 million Australians tuned in for the AFL Grand Final. That's pretty significant, to have an audience focused in one spot. So, I'm just starting the conversation today, Sean. I thought probably a good place to start is I wonder why that is, and why the marketeers out there haven't looked at these particular opportunities as our chance to do some flagship marketing. So that in its own is probably worth another conversation for another day, but I thought that was one of the stark points that we're not really seeing anyone take advantage of this particular nexus and come out hard with some new promos or indeed pushing some new campaigns. So that was sort of the first interesting stat that we got out of this. However, looking at that, I thought my people, those that have to stay sober, the poor unfortunate souls that are on my staff that have to stay sober and sit and look at every single ad,
yep.
Have come back with some interesting information. And we saw that combined, out of the 53 ads that were shown during the games, 42% included a domain name as a call to action, whereas only 7% referred to social media. So, what this tells me is the brands are looking for more than just a conversation. And I think we've seen Twitter in the past being set up as the be-all and end-all, or specifically social media, I should say, or group. And I think brands have evolved and are now looking at a long-term engagement and still seeing their website as the place where that needs to happen, where that level of engagement needs to happen. So, I thought that was really that was interesting, and that the social media usually was just about let's get a conversation going, and then I feel that the brands would hope that there would be some further call to action once that interaction was started. So. That's healthy. I think that's great as far as seeing domain names out in front, as far as being a call to action. Full stop. Some of the concerning statistics: 9% used search as a call to action, and this was largely led by, I should say, Holden, and it's just absolutely perplexing to me in this day and age why folks are using search. And I've done some articles about this previously, but I don't get it. I don't understand if you've gone to the trouble of educating an audience on a particular topic, and it might be the new VF world record breaking ute. Yep. Why you would send someone to a competitive environment, buy those keywords, hope that no one else has bought those keywords, and more recently, Google has survived some court cases to say that anyone can buy keywords of any other brand. And so you put the consumer in a competitive environment, and then hope that they'll select you, click on your link, and then go to your website. So there's a reason why Google's making so much money is because marketers are stupid. You've got a brand new message that you're putting out there. To do a domain name where you own that and you own it, somewhat perpetually, so long as you pay the small cost of a domain name, and you can steer people to that traffic forever, and be authoritative. That seems to me to be the no-brainer. The issue you've got, of course, is that the marketers are looking at their statistics as to how people are coming to their website. They're seeing that they're coming through search, and then they're saying, we'll use search as part of our campaign. And it's the tail wagging the dog. Yep. Search is part of the problem, not part of the solution. And the more we ensure that, the beauty of domain names is that they are pinned to the backbone of the DNS, which runs our internet. And the better we can have, the better we can send people to authoritative sources as marketers, where they can't be, pushed off in a different direction or stolen from us. The better our marketing is going to be. So I shook my head when I saw the search as a call to action, and it's seeing a little bit of a spike. So I think this year's trend has been less social and probably a little bit more of a push into search than we've seen in the past. And I hope that that's a trend that falls away quickly, because it really is. It's double dipping for the advertiser, for the marketer. He's got to pay, number one, for the advertising space to get your eyeballs in the first place, and then he has to pay for the keywords once you get to Google. It's a double dipping process. It's not efficient. It's just plain stupid.
And I guess the other side of the double dipping is if you do have that social call to action and you don't have a team sitting there ready to activate that hashtag and drive them somewhere, you'll just end up with this conversation sitting out in the ether, whether it be Facebook or Twitter, that you're not ready to engage that audience. So
and that's a great point, Sean. Yeah, it absolutely needs to have the backing and support in order to reach that level of engagement that reaches a call to action. The issue I have with social media, of course, it can get hijacked as well, and things can go terribly wrong for you, and it's done in a very, very public way. So unless you're managing that process, and that does take significant resources, and it's a point in time. There's a limited thing. How long do you need to keep those people going for? A domain name sits around forever and doesn't require any management from your end once it's set up. Whereas if you're managing social, you need someone responding to that social and engaging with the client, and that comes at a significant cost, because when do you stop at an hour after the campaign, 2 hours, 5 hours, 2 days, so on and so forth. So it's a great point you make. Much in the same way as the double dipping with the search, potentially a social media call to action has the same ramifications.
Do you think there's a little bit of follow the leader in looking at the success stories of the Oreos' great tweet during the blackout of the grand final, of the Super Bowl, where it got so much traction, but really it didn't really get as much coverage as ads themselves, and it really didn't drive people to Oreo's site or that kind of thing. Do you think there's a bit of follow the leader as far as using social and saying, yes, we're ticking that box, and that's why we're putting it on our ad?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Look, I'm a little cynical on social, and I'm sorry that I'm like that. That doesn't make me an old head. Our business here is very much built around trying to make sure that we're innovating and being at the cutting edge, hopefully not the bleeding edge of all things marketing, and we've done very well in that regard. So I certainly am aware of social, but I am a critic in the way that I think people ask more of it than it can deliver. I think if you're looking for an engagement level of trying to get a litmus on where your customer base is at and what they think of your product, there's some very good reasons there. But if really you're looking at a call to action in the true sense of resulting in a purchase or some sort of return on investment, I think you're going to struggle. So although Oreo did that, I wonder at the end of the day, did they end up selling more cookies? And that's really where the rubber hits the road. We've all got budgets to manage, and we've all made commitments with respect to our return on investment. So, we need to be mindful that we're pushing people in the right direction and pushing them to a point where there's a goal in mind for us.
Yeah, I think we work with a lot of teams around activating their social, but one of the things we always say, it's a hub and spoke model, and your website and your domain is at that middle of that hub, and all your social channels should be driving fans back to your website. All the sports teams out there are trying to get page views and more fans on their site. That's got to be their home base, because these social platforms, I don't think any of them are going to be the next MySpace, but they could be. So if you go put all your eggs in that basket, for that platform, and then that platform gets changed, tweaked. It's not your platform. They're controlling it. You always want to make sure that you are driving the fans back to your website, and from that site, then you activate your social. I think Coca-Cola did that really well with their Super Bowl ads, in that telling the story, what happens next. Go to our site, and you decide what happens next. And they were having a race effectively in their ad, and they took their ad, extended it in digital on their website, and allowed social to promote, having fans telling them, hey, check out this site. You've got to see the rest of this ad. I think that's the right way to do it. Send them to the site and then use social to promote it online.
Yeah, never truer word has been spoken, Sean. You've nailed it. Exactly I 100% agree with you. Is I think ultimately a brand needs to have a home on the web. And unfortunately, if you put that home in the walled garden of another brand, for example, Facebook, we've seen a trend where folks have said, well, all the users are using Facebook, so this will be where our sole presence is now. And we send people to facebook.com/brand. That can't be your complete existence. You are putting you have no control over SLAs. There's a whole number of different issues that come around that, and you've picked up on a couple of them very well. Then, ultimately, I think your domain name is your piece of the internet. And if you don't, so long as you manage that appropriately, you have that forever. So it doesn't matter any other forces, any other trends that come through, as you correctly said, MySpace or whatever else, you'll always have some consistency, and it's authoritative. This was part of the selling point when we're out there speaking to people about new generic top-level domains, so whatever you want. We were out there talking to brands about whether they should subscribe to and apply. That was part of it. Is a domain name is you're getting a small piece of, for example, .com or .com.au here locally. But what if I could offer you a actual mission critical piece of the internet that was yours forever? So a lot of folks, the biggest brands on the planet, have subscribed to this, and including such brands as the AFL and some geographic locations like .Melbourne and .Sydney. We're going to see pieces of the internet now segregated where brands can exist at the top level and start to generate much more efficient user interaction. So the AFL will indeed have 2013 Grand Final .AFL, where you'll be able to get specific information and content that, as far as a market is concerned, about doing a call to action, makes it very, very direct and still involves the brand. So, I think it's the next evolution of what we've seen. For a long time, we stared at a billboard, and what told us that a domain name was, at the start, it was a www. Even before that, we used to see http://www.google.com.au. And we thought, okay, that's obviously a web address. Then we lost the HTTP, and then we said www.google.com.au, and we said, well, that's still an internet address. Then we got rid of the www, and now when we look at it, we say google.com.au, and the bit that tells us it's still the com or the com.au. I think as we move, but we're still selling someone else's product. Com doesn't actually mean anything anymore, and it's actually just a device that helps us, notify that this is a domain name or something, a navigation tool for the internet. I think the final evolution of this is upon us with new GTLDs, such that when I see shoes.nike up on a billboard, I won't be looking for a www. I won't be looking for a .com at the end. The signifier will be the dot. So we're about to see a bit of an evolution in the way that we market, and indeed the way that we interact with the internet is going to become a lot more efficient. So long as brands can mobilise, there'll be some end user confusion for a little while, but I think it's an exciting time for marketers, and indeed consumers will feel that with some pretty innovative ways to interact with brands online.
Yeah, and it will offer really simple calls to action. When you are putting up your Super Bowl ad or your AFL Grand Final ad, so it won't be go to Coca-Cola.com. It'll be go to superbowl.coca-cola.
Exactly what I was. Yeah,
and that's where they will run those campaigns. So marketers will be able to run these innovative campaigns. They'll be able to make sure that they're obviously optimized for mobile, because that's the device that all the fans will be using, and it can be separated off the standard brand site, and you don't have to worry about doing these site takeovers every time you're running a different TVC. You can just have these TVCs split up, whether they be regionally located for a regional team advert or something in a national play. I think that's going to be the flexibility that brands will have going forward if they do go down the route of having their own top level domain.
Yeah, I think you're right. Those that have taken the initiative to apply now, and we're seeing them come through the process as we speak, and I expect very, very shortly we'll start to see the very first ones becoming live on the internet. Those that have will certainly be able to take advantage of that. I mean, the headaches that brands have now about, I've got a new campaign going, go and check whether the domain name's available. Oh, we better change the name of the campaign because the domain name wasn't available. Yeah, that goes.
Yep.
Because they're in complete control of their namespace and no one else can pinch any names. So if I want to do Grand Final 2014.afl, it's right there. I don't have to worry about the fact that someone's gone and pinched it under com or under com.au. And then indeed, you're right, every other brand could do a campaign-related activity or domain name that supports the activity that they're doing within that particular sphere. So I think we're going to see a lot more, as I said earlier, efficient marketing that consumers will relate to a lot more quickly. Should say those brands that didn't, we should pay attention to them, because clearly there's a lot more of those brands that didn't participate in the new GTLD program. What they're going to see is a whole lot of new generic names coming down the pipeline, whether it be .sport, as I said earlier, .melbourne, .sydney, there'll be .web. There'll be some very open namespaces and some very niche verticals. And so the message for those brands is, look for the TLDs that you think are most appropriate to your business. I don't suggest go out there and register your name in every single one of them. That's going to be a very expensive exercise. But really, it's about what you want to do is capture eyeballs. Where are eyeballs most likely to go? So if I'm IBM, and IBM did apply, so let's pretend they didn't, I might want to go and get .laptop or get IBM.laptop, IBM.computer, something like that. Am I going to go and get IBM.fishing or IBM.weddings? Probably not.
Yep. So
the strategy for a brand that didn't apply is to have a look what's coming down the pipeline, see what's most relevant to your core business, and look at securing those names, importantly, underneath each one of those. I think we'll start to see domain names become a little bit more of a commodity. However, they'll be a lot more applicable to our businesses going forward, and hopefully that means a lot more understandable with respect to the products that they're pushing.
Well, thank you very much, Adrian, for some of the insights there. I'll link to your report on the AFL and NRL Grand Final in the show notes, but thanks for joining me on Sports Geek Podcast.
No worries, Sean.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Adrian for that interview, and thanks to my mate and good bloke Josh Rowe, who helped tee up that interview with Adrian. The links to Adrian's article in Marketing Mag and also his article back on his site is in the show notes, and that article actually will be included in this week's Sports Geek News, so sign up and you'll get all the articles that I read each week in a nice friendly email, and thank you for the people who have been giving me some good response to that. I will keep it up. I think one of the main takeaways, and Adrian wasn't a massive fan of social media, and that's fine. It's not for everyone. But I think that one of the main takeaways for me was that having a defined call to action and taking it back to your website, and which is obviously the main thing that Adrian was trying to say. But my main thing is just to think really more like a social media platform. So the main reason that companies are using social media calls to action in their advertising is they've bought into a little bit of the hype that Facebook and Twitter and to a lesser extent Instagram are pushing in, that everyone needs to be engaged and be on these platforms. And they're doing that because they have a goal to get more people on their site, to get more users to their site and increase their time on site. So my main thing, and it's something that I'm working with my clients, especially around social media engagement and things like that, is to think more like a social media platform. Think about it. What would Zuck do is probably a good way of putting it. They're always trying to get people back to their site, keep them on their site for longer, and get them to engage with other fans on their site. And so that should still be the goal from a sports marketer's point of view, is to use those social media channels to drive fans back to your site. How can we get fans coming back to our site to read our content, to engage with our content, to comment on our articles? I think that's really critical. So don't just go and engage those fans on those platforms and stay on those platforms. It is good to do specific campaigns, specific activations that work for those platforms, like a Twitter chat or having a call to action to get fans to share your message on Instagram and share their photos. But you also want to be remembering that some of the KPIs, some of the key KPIs that you're looking at when you're at the end of year, and that's something that we're currently going through now, is page views, unique visitors, time on site. They're the numbers you want to grow. It is easy for a CEO of an organisation to look at, to come out of watching the movie The Social Network and ask their team, hey, why don't we have more Facebook likes? But it's not really the key metric you want to be tracking. You want to be tracking how much of our audience are engaged, how much of our audience are coming to our site because of what we post on those social networks. That's the really important thing. So remember that hub and spoke model, that all these social media channels are effectively promotion tools to get people back to your site. And then in the end game, as we've talked about previously on the podcast, from a CRM point of view, into your database so you can start having that conversation with them from an email point of view as you learn more information about them. On halftime this week, I discussed dynamic and variable pricing and tried to explain both concepts in under 5 minutes.
Sean Carolan, our sports digital media guru for sportsgeekhq.com.
And he's got his work up against it today. He's going to try and explain some things I have no idea about. G'day, Sean.
G'day, Huff. How you doing?
I'm going very well. You've got to explain to me the difference between variable and dynamic pricing.
Yeah, well,
What are they?
Yeah, so the LA Clippers actually put out a video, and thanks to a good mate of mine, Russell Scabetti, who's at the Jets, who tweeted it out, and so I've picked that up and run that with the topic. So they actually put out a video to explain it to their fans. So it's still a relatively new concept. So the difference is variable pricing is...
These are for tickets.
This is for tickets. Right. And so what they've now done is said not all games are equal. Like when LeBron comes to town, he only comes to town once with the Miami Heat. It's a hot ticket. Everyone wants to go. So there's more demand. They can't put in more seats. The Staples Center is a fixed venue. There's only so many amounts of seats. So because there is that strong demand, they've said those tickets are going to be worth more because it's LeBron on a Friday night, big night in town.
Yep.
Whereas when the Bobcats come through on a Tuesday night in the last leg of a 6-game road trip, it's not the hottest ticket, so it's a cheaper ticket. So that's where they've said from a variable pricing point of view, they've gone through their 41 home games and said that tickets are going to be different, and it's because they've got and they've had to take into consideration the secondary market, the fact that people resell them,
Yep.
and they can look at all those factors to say, well, this is why we're saying the Heat game is worth this and the Bobcats game's worth this, and that's from the courtside seats all the way to the upper deck.
That makes a bit of sense, though.
So that's so when you're going to buy, that's why if you looked at two tickets, why are they different? Why aren't they the same? They're effectively saying it's not the same product, and it's pretty fair to say that Clippers versus Heat is not the same as Clippers versus the Bobcats. Not to diminish the Bobcats, but that's the variable pricing. So if you're a season ticket holder, you'll get all these tickets, and the prices will be different.
Yep.
So dynamic pricing is another way to, again, satisfy the demand that's out there for specific games. And so the way it works, it's a little bit like airlines.
Yeah.
If you buy a ticket to, if you buy a ticket to Gold Coast or somewhere else 6 months out during the school holidays, you'll know what price it is. But if you try to buy that ticket a week out, you'll pay through the nose.
Yep, there's a premium attached.
It's a premium attached. So, and that's tied to the demand. So they're moving that in a similar way with dynamic pricing with NBA games. So again, if we look at that Miami Heat example, that is going to be a hot ticket. Any tickets that are available, people are going to clamour for, and there will be people that will pay more for them. So that price will be adjusted to meet that demand and meet that price. So from a season ticket holder point of view, if you've bought the 41 games, and this is what the Clippers are trying to do.
They're trying to get you to buy a season ticket.
They're trying to get you to buy a season ticket. They're giving you a bit of revisionist history to say if you were a season ticket member last year, then you would have saved this much money.
Right.
On the dynamic pricing environment and all those variables. So if you would have just said, I just want to go to 10 games, but I want to see the Lakers and the Spurs and the Heat and all the top games, well, if you add up all those numbers, it probably adds up to be the total of the season's ticket. So it'd be interesting to see if it does make its way to Australia, but the problem we have in Australia is that we have stadiums that aren't full. So we can't create that demand. So potentially we could put a variable price on, say, Anzac Day and say that's a premium product because more people want it and we've said it differently.
Yep.
But then, and potentially cheaper price on a smaller game with one of the expansion teams. But at the moment, because you can always, pretty much for most games during the year, you can rock up to the MCG and get a ticket because it's big enough and it doesn't have it's not full.
Yeah.
So it probably will work potentially. I think dynamic price will probably kick in with guys like at the Adelaide Oval, the Crows and the Power, and potentially could happen also at Patterson's because they're at that capacity and they've only got so many tickets left.
So it's coming to a sports venue near you soon?
Potentially it would, because it's a way to maximise revenue for the team because they can get more money per seat.
This is why you're on the big bucks, mate. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, mate.
Check out Sports Trends Map for your team or sports event at sportsgeekhq.com/sportstrendsmap.
It was tough trying to explain dynamic and variable pricing, especially in the Australian market where it is relatively new. I've included the audio that the Clippers shared from the video. The links will be in the show notes along with Russell Scabetti's, but here's the Clippers video.
Hi, this is Brian Seaman, Clippers radio announcer, and I'm here today to give you an inside view on variable and dynamic pricing and how it affects the price you see on your season tickets for the season. Now let me explain a couple of terms we've heard used in regards to ticket pricing and what they mean to you. Variable and dynamic pricing. Variable pricing refers to varying prices based off of factors such as opponent, day of the week, and time of season. Now, all games are not valued equally, so this variable pricing is reflected by differing values for each game in the variable pricing that you see printed on your season tickets as we best estimated prior to the start of the season. Last season, Clippers MVPs enjoyed about a 30% savings over the variable priced single game value of their tickets over the course of the season. And this year, the savings is estimated to be no less than 20%, and in many cases, more. Dynamic pricing exists as a response to the current market. Customers are accustomed to fluctuating prices for airplane tickets, hotels, concerts, and even services like accounting and haircuts. Almost every team in the NBA, NHL, and Major League Baseball has implemented some form of variable and dynamic pricing because it communicates the actual value of tickets to our MVPs and single-game buyers. Many exciting and unpredictable things happen throughout the NBA, which changes the demand for each game. By responding to these changes appropriately and adjusting prices will help to continue our sellout streak. Ticket prices are calculated using data from season ticket sales, single game sales, secondary market sales, input from the NBA, and third-party consulting firms. These prices are carefully created and monitored over the season. So let's discuss what this all means to you, our Clippers MVP. Think about your season ticket package as a season investment rather than an on-game price basis. So for example, if your seats are located in section 113, you paid $9,240 for them, yet the single game price for those seats is about $11,272. It's a pretty good deal. Variable pricing on your seats helps you accurately value each ticket to each game. This is helpful for taking care of great clients, splitting with friends, and of course posting on NBAtickets.com when you can't make it. So in summary, we recommend that you use the printed prices on your ticket as a guideline for their market prices. However, it's up to you to decide the unique intrinsic value to you, your friends, or your clients. A season ticket is far and away the best value with the Los Angeles Clippers. Not only do you get the best prices and best seats in the marketplace, you get tons of extra benefits like game day experiences, special events, basketball clinics, vacation credit exchange, and more. We are looking forward to an exciting, historic season of Clippers basketball and appreciate your support. I'll see you at Staples Center.
Well, that was the Clippers video to explain to fans dynamic and variable pricing. So, like I said, I think it's really important to educate your market. I really like the case study and trying to explain it like airline ticket pricing, because that's something that even though people are not a fan of, they understand that if you don't get your airline tickets early, it's going to be more expensive later on. So it's something that the sports market is trying to grow. There's going to be obviously backlash, and one of the things you want to make sure of is that your season ticket holder base remains steady and remains happy about it. And the fact that there is a strong secondary market, the NBA last year set up NBAtickets.com as a reseller market themselves to allow fans to resell their own tickets. Now that those tickets all have different prices, the fans have a better understanding of what they can do with what they can do with their tickets. So that wraps up another episode. I did promise at the start of the podcast some tools that you can use with Google Chrome. So first of all, Google Chrome is the browser of choice here at Sports Geek, just for the flexibility it provides and the fact that we're using pretty much all things Google. Yes, Google knows everything I do, but I'm not too fussed about that. Although recently it did crash and lose all my settings, so it sort of prompted me to go through and reinstall some of the extensions that I use. And I use extensions more so than apps, because apps really just glorify bookmarks. But yeah, the main reason I use Google Chrome is for the quick and easy ability to click Inspect Element and also extend the developer tools that Google Chrome has. Like I've said before, I've still got a fair bit of geek in me, so I like going behind the curtain of web code to see what's happening. It's always good just to keep an idea, get an idea of what people are trying to do behind the scenes. So if you're ever trying to figure out how someone did something on a website, Inspect Element in Google Chrome. There's also an extension to that called the Page Speed Insights extension, which can give you a little bit of a report straight in the browser on where potential issues might lie with why your website's taking a little long time to load. So it'll identify images that are the wrong size or CSS files, those kind of things. Some other ones that I use a lot, I'm a big fan of Evernote, and the clipper in Evernote is terrific, and you can clip pages and links, and I use that extensively when putting together the Sports Geek news and finding content to tweet out. Another one is if you want to do some quick meme-like graphics, PicMonkey has got an extension, and you can pretty much click on it and create a quick meme and put some words on an image to send out pretty easily using PicMonkey. If you've never tried that tool, it's a nice, easy one to use. So there's some of the tools. I also, from an extensions point of view, I'm a big fan of 1Password as a way to store and record all my passwords and make sure I've got strong passwords with all the different sites I log into. I have turned on two-factor authentication for all my key accounts, and I suggest you do the same. So that wraps up. This was episode 21, The Sounds of the Game this week. I went back into the Sports Geek archives, back to when I went to the Warriors game earlier this year. So that was their trampoline team, and you can hear a good mate of mine, Tim Bull, who's now working in San Francisco, counting as the guys were doing, I think it was a 6-man alley-oop. Thank you to people who have been sending in sounds of the game. I'm getting a little bit of a bank of them now, so they'll be used on episodes in the future. So if you're at a game this weekend or this week, pull out your phone, record some of the sounds of the game. I'd love to include it on the podcast. That wraps up episode 21. As I did last week, starting to dedicate each episode to a athlete that wore that number. I'm going to dedicate this episode to Dominique Wilkins, Atlanta Hawks Hall of Famer, wore the number 21 with distinction, and I pretty much chose him not only because he was a terrific player and a slam dunk champion, but he's one of my scar brothers. He had an Achilles injury late in his career and came back and was quite serviceable after that surgery. So I hope to be back on the hardwood in the next couple of months, much like Kobe Bryant. So yeah, this episode to Dominique Wilkins. That's it for today. My name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek. You can find me on most platforms, and if I'm not on a platform, please send me a tweet and tell me to get on it. Cheers.
Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. Find all Sports Geek podcasts at sportsgeekhq.com/SGP. Did you know Sports Geek Podcast has listeners in over 35 countries? Thank you for sharing. Thanks for listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.